May 10th, 1972. The skies over North Vietnam. The humidity inside the cockpit of the MiG-21 aircraft is suffocating. For the pilot of the Vietnam People's Air Force, the tactical situation should be clear. He is flying over his home turf, guided by the reassuring voice of Ground Control Intercept, or GCI, broadcasting from a bunker deep within Hanoi. The geometric logic of the engagement is etched into his mind. He knows his enemy. He knows the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. To the North Vietnamese pilots, the Phantom is a brute. It is large, heavy, and leaves a distinct trail of black smoke that marks its position from miles away. It is a hammer in a world that requires a scalpel. The MiG-21 aircraft, by comparison, is a dagger, agile, fast, and difficult to spot. In a turning fight, the laws of physics favor the lighter, Soviet-designed fighter. The American doctrine relies on speed and long-range missiles. The Vietnamese doctrine relies on stealth, ambush, and the turning fight. But today, the math is wrong. The VPAF pilot receives a vector. A flight of Phantoms is inbound, targeting the Paul Duma Bridge. He executes a hard bank, pulling G-forces that drain the blood from his head, positioning himself for a classic ambush. He expects the Americans to panic. He expects them to jettison their bombs and attempt to turn, bleeding their energy and making them sitting ducks for his heat-seeking atoll missiles. That is what usually happens. That is what should happen. Instead, the lead Phantom reacts with a terrifying, unnatural precision. It does not bank wildly. It does not bleed energy. It slides through the sky with an efficiency that defies the clumsy reputation of the airframe. The VPAF pilot watches his radar warning receiver scream, but the geometry is impossible. He is outside the optimal firing envelope of the American Sparrow missiles. He should be safe. He is in the clutter, the confused radar returns of the ground aimed at blinding the American systems. Yet, a white trail erupts from the Phantom, a radar-guided AIM-7 Sparrow missile. It shouldn't track. It shouldn't be able to distinguish the silver MiG from the jungle canopy below. But the missile does not waver. It cuts through the humid air, ignoring the ground clutter, ignoring the evasive maneuvers, locking onto the heat and metal of the MiG-21 aircraft with a predatory certainty. The impact is instantaneous. On the ground in Hanoi, the radar blip representing one of their finest interceptors simply vanishes. There is no distress call, just static. This was not a lucky shot. In the command bunkers of the VPAF, the mood shifts from confidence to confusion. This was the first day of Operation Linebacker, the massive American air campaign to blunt the Easter offensive. The North Vietnamese expected the sheer volume of American air power. They did not expect this new, invisible lethality. Reports begin to trickle in from other sectors. Surviving pilots land with shaking hands, describing Phantoms that fight differently. They talk about American formations that seem to have eyes in the back of their heads. They describe missiles being fired at angles that suggest the American pilots are no longer wrestling with their complex radar systems, but have somehow automated the kill. The VPAF intelligence officers analyze the flight data. They look at the engagement times. Usually, an American pilot struggles with the heavy workload of the F-4 Phantom. The pilot has to fly the plane, manage the fuel, listen to the radio, watch the threat scope, and manipulate the radar to get a lock. It is too much for one man. It leads to mistakes. It leads to missed shots. But Flight Oyster, the call sign associated with these kills, is making zero mistakes. The radar locks are instant. The threat prioritization is machine-like. The senior strategists in Hanoi stare at the maps. They are looking for a name. They assume, naturally, that the Americans have deployed a super ace. A pilot with the stick and rudder skills of the Red Baron and the technical mind of a scientist. They are looking for the man in the front seat. They are looking for the hands on the flight controls. They have no idea that the danger isn't coming from the pilot's hands. It is coming from the mind of the man sitting behind him. This is the story of how the concept of the fighter pilot was forever shattered. It is the story of how an unseen, unheralded officer changed the course of the air war by mastering the one thing the enemy couldn't see, the electrons. If you want to understand the hidden mechanics of history and the silent warriors of the Cold War, make sure you are subscribed to Cold War Impact. The confusion in Hanoi deepens as the weeks of May 1972 drag on. The kill ratios are shifting. For years, the VPAF had embarrassed the United States Air Force. The small, agile MiGs were trading blows with the technological might of America and winning. The exchange ratio had dropped to nearly 1-to-1, a catastrophic failure for a superpower. But in this specific sector, involving this specific flight of phantoms, the ratio is skewing violently back in America's favor. The North Vietnamese analysts pull the tapes from their own radar tracking stations. They observe the maneuvers of the American aircraft tail number 660209. It is an F-4D model. There is nothing externally special about it. It has the same engines, the same wings, the same lack of an internal gun as every other Phantom. So, why is it unbeatable? They begin to suspect a new technology. Perhaps the Americans have upgraded the radar computer? Perhaps there is a new secret variant of the Sidewinder missile that can turn 90 degrees? The VPAF commanders order their pilots to be cautious around this particular flight. They treat the aircraft as a priority target. If they can shoot it down, they can inspect the wreckage. They can find the secret weapon. They set traps. They utilize drag and bag tactics, sending a lone MiG-19 aircraft to lure the Phantom into a nest of anti-aircraft artillery. The Phantom takes the bait, diving into the kill zone. The Vietnamese gunners tense up, waiting for the heavy American fighter to become overwhelmed by the task saturation of dodging flak while tracking a target. But the Phantom doesn't get overwhelmed. It weaves through the flak bursts while simultaneously maintaining a hard radar lock on the bait aircraft. It fires a missile while pulling high G-force, a maneuver that usually breaks the radar lock. The missile hits. The bait is destroyed. The Phantom accelerates out of the trap, untouched. To the enemy, this capability is terrifying because it is inexplicable. No pilot should be able to multitask with that level of perfection. It is as if there are two brains inside that cockpit, operating in perfect telepathic synchronization. The VPAF doesn't realize how close to the truth they are. They are searching for a technological explanation for a human revolution. They are looking at the machine, ignoring the ghost in the machine. They are about to learn a hard lesson. In the missile age, flying the plane is only half the battle. The real war is fought on a small, green, flickering scope in the dark. By June 1972, the anomaly has a pattern. In the signals intelligence bunkers north of Hanoi, North Vietnamese officers huddle around magnetic tape recorders, replaying the chaotic symphony of air combat. They are trying to deconstruct the lethality of the flight call sign, Oyster. Usually, American radio chatter during a dogfight is a mess of adrenaline. Pilots scream warnings, curse their equipment, and shout over the roar of engines and the blare of stall warnings. It is the sound of men under extreme duress. But when the analysts play the tapes of Oyster 1, they hear something chillingly different. They hear two distinct cadences. There is the pilot, whose breathing is heavy, straining against 6 or 7 Gs. But cutting through the static is a second voice. This voice is flat, devoid of fear, and utterly clinical. It does not sound like a subordinate checking a map. It sounds like a computer issuing commands. Brake right, hard. Bandits at 4 o'clock. Low. Locked. Shoot. The analysts note the timing. The command to shoot often comes a split second before the pilot confirms the visual tally. The second voice is seeing things the pilot cannot. It is seeing the future. This presents a terrifying tactical problem for the Vietnam People's Air Force. Their entire defensive strategy is built on the limitations of the American pilot's human vision. The MiG-17 aircraft and MiG-21 aircraft are small. Painted in camouflage, they disappear against the lush green carpet of the jungle. If the American pilot cannot see them, he cannot kill them. But Oyster 1 is killing them without seeing them. The mystery deepens when the VPAF examines the wreckage of their downed aircraft. The forensic evidence on the fuselage tells a story of impossible geometry. In a standard turning fight, a heat-seeking missile like the AIM-9 Sidewinder needs to be fired from behind the target, looking directly into the hot exhaust of the jet engine. It is a tail chase weapon. However, many of the recent kills are happening from the front or the side. The American missiles are intercepting the MiGs in a head-on aspect. This requires a radar-guided AIM-7 Sparrow. Every Soviet technical manual in Hanoi says this is unlikely. The APQ-120 radar system inside the F-4 Phantom is notorious for losing its lock during violent maneuvers. If the Phantom turns hard, the radar gimbal hits its limit, the screen goes black, and the missile goes stupid. To fire a Sparrow, the Phantom is supposed to fly straight and level a suicidal move in a dogfight. Yet, The radar tapes prove that Oyster 1 is firing radar missiles while banking at 60 degrees. They are bending the electronic beam in ways that shouldn't be possible. The Soviets, observing this data, suspect that the Americans have deployed a new automated fire control computer. They imagine a black box of transistors and vacuum tubes that calculates the intercept point faster than a human ever could. They send urgent queries to Moscow, asking if intelligence has compromised a new American look-down, shoot-down radar. But the reality is far more disturbing than a new computer. Inside the cockpit of Oyster 1, there is no new computer. There is only a small circular scope, glowing with a sickly green phosphorus light. It is cluttered with noise, false returns from the ground, clouds, and electrical interference. To the untrained eye, it looks like a chaotic storm of green static. The computer, the Soviets fear, is actually the biological processing power of the man staring into that green storm. While the pilot looks outside, scanning the horizon, the man in the back seat has his head buried in a rubber hood, shutting out the sunlight. He is interpreting the abstract shapes of radar energy. He knows that a specific flicker in the static isn't a mountain, but a MiG-21 aircraft trying to hide. He is manually manipulating the radar antenna, wrestling the controls with his fingertips to keep the electronic eye focused on the enemy while his own body is being crushed by gravitational forces. It is a feat of physical and mental endurance that rivals a concert pianist playing a concerto while strapped to a centrifuge. The North Vietnamese do not know this. They only know that their sanctuary is gone. The clouds are no longer cover. The jungle is no longer a shield. On July 8, 1972, the situation reaches a breaking point. The VPAF scrambles MiG-21 aircraft from multiple airfields, attempting to overwhelm the American strike packages with sheer numbers. The logic is simple. Flood the sky. The Americans respond. The engagement is a swirling melee, a furball involving dozens of aircraft. In this chaos, situational awareness usually collapses. Pilots lose track of their wingmen. They lose track of the enemy. But amidst the confusion, the second voice remains calm. The intercept logs from that day show the voice guiding the Phantom through the chaos, like a grandmaster moving a chess piece. He isolates a pair of MiGs. He manages the radar scan to keep them illuminated. Then, he does something that shocks the listening intelligence officers. The pilot calls out that he has lost visual contact. The MiGs have dived into the haze. By all rights, the engagement should be over. The Americans should disengage. Instead, the second voice takes over. He talks the pilot onto a blind intercept vector. He is guiding the 60,000-pound fighter jet solely by the instruments in the rear cockpit. He calls the shot. 2 more MiGs fall from the sky. The North Vietnamese are humiliated. Their pilots are the elite of the nation, trained in the Soviet Union, flying machines designed for this exact environment. And yet, they are being dismantled by an enemy who seems to be rewriting the physics of the engagement. The psychological toll begins to mount. VPAF pilots begin to fear the radar warning receiver more than the sight of the enemy. When that light glows, telling them a Phantom is painting them with radar, they know it isn't just a machine looking at them. It is him, the ghost in the static. They need to stop this crew. They need to kill the head of the snake. They begin to focus all their energy on identifying the specific aircraft formation, waiting for the pilot Steve Ritchie to make a mistake. But they are still focusing on the wrong man. By August 1972, the sky over North Vietnam has become a chessboard where the pieces move at Mach 2. The North Vietnamese ground control intercept has adapted. They realize they cannot win a technical duel against the second voice and his radar-guided missiles at long range. They change the game. They stop trying to outfly the Americans and start trying to outthink them. The new VPAF tactic is brute force concealment. They keep their MiG-21 aircraft low, hiding in the noise of the ground clutter, waiting until the Americans are visually distracted before popping up like snipers. They want to force the Phantoms into a knife fight, a turning battle where radar is useless and the pilot's eyes are the only thing that matters. In a turning fight, the heavy Phantom is vulnerable. In a turning fight, the computer in the back seat should be irrelevant. On August 28, 1972, the trap is sprung. A strike force of American Phantoms pushes north toward Hanoi. Leading the flight is the aircraft with tail number 463. Inside are the men the North Vietnamese have been hunting. In the front seat is Captain Steve Ritchie, a pilot with 4 kills to his name. One more, and he becomes the first Air Force ace of the war. He is the face of the campaign, aggressive, skilled, and hungry. But the North Vietnamese are counting on that hunger. They vector a flight of MiGs directly at the American formation, appearing as vague blips on the long-range scan. It looks like an easy intercept. Ritchie turns to engage. This is exactly what the enemy wants. They are luring the Americans into a merge, a chaotic head-on pass where the closing speed is over 1,000 miles per hour. At this range, the radar screen usually becomes a wash of bright green light, blinded by the proximity of the targets. The backseater should be blind. But Chuck de Bellevue, the man in the back, does not go blind. As the MiGs rush in, de Bellevue does the impossible. While his body is slammed against the side of the cockpit by the violence of the turn, his hands are a blur of motion on the radar controls. He is manually filtering the signal. He strips away the ground clutter. He isolates the specific frequency return of the lead MiG. He isn't just watching a screen, he is curating a kill. Contact! Dead ahead. 4 miles. The calm voice cuts through the chaos again. Ritchie is struggling to see the small silver MiGs against the sun glare. He is flying on instinct. But de Bellevue is flying on data. He hands Ritchie the electronic lock on a silver platter. Shoot. Ritchie pulls the trigger. The Sparrow missile launches. But unlike a heat-seeking missile that requires the pilot to be behind the enemy, this radar missile leaps off the rail in a head-on charge. It is a shot that defies the old rules of dogfighting. The MiG pilot never sees it coming. The missile impacts the enemy aircraft before the pilot can even complete his turn. The fireball is massive. It is the 5th kill. Steve Ritchie is an ace. The American formation turns south, roaring back to base in Thailand. The radio waves explode with celebration. The Red Baron of the Vietnam War has been crowned. When they land at U Dawn Royal Thai Air Force Base, the scene is cinematic. Champagne corks pop. Cameras flash. A mob of reporters and generals surrounds the cockpit. Captain Steve Ritchie climbs out of the front seat, the conquering hero. He is the golden boy, the fighter pilot who restored American pride. The narrative is set. The pilot is the weapon. The pilot is the hero. In the background, almost unnoticed by the press, the man from the back seat climbs down. Chuck de Bellevue stands on the tarmac, watching the celebration. He has the same number of kills. He was in the same danger. But in the eyes of the public, and even the enemy, he is just the wizzo, the guy who handles the radio. The North Vietnamese intelligence analysts breathe a sigh of relief. They monitor the news reports. They see that Steve Ritchie, the ace, is being rotated home. The superkiller is leaving the war to do a press tour in the United States. They believe the threat has been neutralized. They believe the magic was in the pilot's hands. They are making a fatal calculation error. They assumed the lethality of that F-4 Phantom left with Steve Ritchie. They do not realize that the true architect of their destruction, the man who mastered the electronic spectrum, the man who turned the radar into a sniper rifle, is not going home. Chuck de Bellevue is staying. And he is about to prove that he doesn't need a famous pilot to dominate the sky. He just needs a driver. The North Vietnamese are about to find out that the ace wasn't the anomaly. The anomaly is still in the air, and he is angry. September 9th, 1972. The Red River Valley. The North Vietnamese Air Force Command believes the storm has passed. Steve Ritchie is gone. The American ace is back in the United States, sipping cocktails and shaking hands. The VPAF planners look at their readiness reports and see an opportunity. The skies are supposedly safer. They believe the magic has left the theater. They are wrong. The magic didn't leave, it just changed seats. On this humid afternoon, a flight of Phantoms, call sign Olds, enters the box. In the lead aircraft, Olds 01, sits Captain John Madden. He is a solid, competent pilot, but he is not a household name. He is new to this specific partnership. But in the back seat sits Captain Chuck de Bellevue. De Bellevue is sitting on 4 kills. He is 1 kill away from becoming an ace. But the history books and the enemy do not respect the man in the back. In the hierarchy of aerial warfare, the WSO is considered baggage. He is the voice in the tube. He is a passenger with a radio. The glory belongs to the man holding the stick. The North Vietnamese pilots are trained to fear the pilot, to outfly the pilot. They do not calculate for the passenger. This underestimation is about to cost them everything. As Old's flight pushes toward the target near Phuc Yen, the ground controllers in Hanoi spot them. They decide to scramble a different kind of threat today. They do not send the high-tech MiG-21 interceptors. Instead, they launch the MiG-19 aircraft. The MiG-19, known to the Chinese and Vietnamese as the J-6, is a vicious, primitive brawler. It is essentially 3 massive cannon barrels wrapped in an engine. It does not rely on complex radar. It is designed for a knife fight. It can outturn a Phantom effortlessly. In a close-range, low-speed turning fight, a MiG-19 should eat an F-4 Phantom alive. The trap is set. The MiGs stay low, hiding in the noise, waiting to drag the heavy Americans into the mud. Madden and de Bellevue spot the MiGs about 10 miles out. The engagement begins instantly. It is not a clinical long-range sniper duel this time. It is a brawl. The MiGs cut hard, forcing the Phantoms to jettison their fuel tanks and turn. This is the moment the VPAF expects the Americans to fail. Without the speed advantage, the Phantom is a brick. The MiG-19 aircraft swarm, looking to bring their heavy 30mm cannons to bear. But the North Vietnamese pilots immediately notice something wrong with Old 01. The American jet is not flying like a brick. It is flying with a terrifying, predictive awareness. Inside the cockpit, the dynamic has shifted entirely. Madden is flying the aircraft, his hands full with the stick and throttle, straining against the G-forces. But he is not making the tactical decisions alone. De Bellevue has taken command of the fight. Usually, in a dogfight, the pilot's vision is limited to the cone in front of him. If a bandit gets behind the 3 to 9 line, the wing line, the pilot is blind. He is vulnerable, but de Bellevue is the eyes in the back of the head. He is twisting in his seat, scanning the rear quadrant, watching the fuel state, watching the radar, watching the wingman. He is building a 3-dimensional model of the battle in his mind and feeding it to Madden in real time. Bandit at 7 o'clock, braking high. Pull into him. Madden pulls. The Phantom shudders as it bleeds speed, nose coming around. Most WSOs would be screaming. Most would be overwhelmed by the sheer terror of having 3 enemy cannons trying to kill them. But the VPAF analysts listening to the radio intercepts later are chilled by the tone. De Bellevue sounds like he is ordering lunch. He is calm. He is precise. He is calculating energy states and geometry while spinning toward the Earth. They spot a MiG-19 attempting to flank them. Madden racks the Phantom around. De Bellevue manages the radar, but the range is too close for a radar shot. They switch to heat seekers. Madden fires an AIM-9 Sidewinder. The missile snakes out, tracking the heat of the MiG's engine. It impacts. The MiG-19 disintegrates. Kill number 5. Chuck de Bellevue is now an ace. He has tied Steve Ritchie. He has done the impossible. At this moment, protocol dictates they should go home. They are low on fuel. They are deep in enemy territory. They have scored a kill. The smart move is to hit the afterburner and run for Thailand. The VPAF controllers expect them to run. They order their surviving MiGs to pursue the fleeing Americans. But Old 01 does not run. De Bellevue looks at his scope. He looks at the fuel gauge. He does the math in a split second. They have enough gas for one more turn. He sees another MiG-19 attempting to engage their wingman. We have a bandit on the wingman, engaging. The decision shocks the enemy. The Americans are turning back into the fight. Madden pulls the Phantom vertical, trading airspeed for altitude, performing a maneuver that seems suicidal against the agile MiG-19 aircraft. But de Bellevue is guiding him. He knows the MiG pilot has lost situational awareness. The MiG is fixated on the wingman. Old 01 crests the top of its loop and comes screaming down. The geometry is perfect. They are descending right onto the tail of the unsuspecting MiG. Madden fires another Sidewinder. The missile tracks true. The second MiG-19 explodes in a ball of orange fire and black smoke. Kill number 6. The sky clears. The surviving MiGs scatter, diving for the deck, fleeing the wrath of this unstoppable crew. Old 01 turns south, engines guzzling the last drops of fuel. They coast across the Mekong River, landing at Udon on fumes. When the canopy opens, the shockwave hits the US Air Force, and eventually, the world. Chuck de Bellevue climbs out of the back seat. He has not just tied the record, he has shattered it. He has 6 confirmed kills. Steve Ritchie, the pilot's pilot, has 5. Randy Cunningham, the Navy legend, has 5. The top ace of the Vietnam War, the deadliest American in the sky, is not a pilot. He is a weapons systems officer. He is a non-rated officer. He doesn't even have a set of flight controls in his cockpit. This realization sends a tremor through the military establishment that is far more profound than the destruction of a few MiGs. It shatters the century-old myth of the fighter pilot. For decades, from the Red Baron to the Battle of Britain, the narrative was the same. The pilot is the warrior. The machine is just the steed. The skill was in the stick and rudder, the physical manipulation of the aircraft. But de Bellevue proved that the era of the knight of the air was over. The era of the systems manager had begun. He proved that in modern warfare, understanding the sensor suite, managing the information flow, and maintaining situational awareness was more lethal than just being able to fly a tight turn. The North Vietnamese intelligence services are left reeling. Their entire doctrine was built on defeating American pilots. They studied American flight maneuvers. They studied American formations. They never studied the backseaters. They realized too late that they had been fighting a two-man organism. They were fighting a brain divided into two bodies. One body handled the physics, the other handled the logic, and the logic was winning. The Soviet advisors reviewing the loss of the MiG-19 aircraft send a grim report back to Moscow. Their conclusion is stark. The Americans have evolved. They have successfully integrated the human mind into the weapon system. The pilot is no longer the sole factor in victory. The shock isn't just the score, it is the method. De Bellevue didn't win because he was lucky. He won because he treated the F-4 Phantom not as a plane, but as a weapons platform. He mastered the radar when others trusted their eyes. He mastered the geometry when others trusted their gut. As the news breaks, the humiliation for the enemy is absolute. They were not beaten by a super pilot born with wings. They were beaten by a quiet, studious officer who simply understood the technology better than they did. They were beaten by the guy in the back seat. The legacy of this moment is written in the design of every modern fighter jet that followed. The F-14 Tomcat, the F-15 Eagle, these aircraft were designed around the concept that the workload was too high for one man. The RIO, Radar Intercept Officer, and the WSO became legends in their own right, finally stepping out of the shadow of the front seat. Chuck de Bellevue retired as a colonel, the highest-scoring ace of the war. He never fired a gun. He never held the stick during a kill, yet he dominates the history books. He proved that in the cold, electronic war of the future, the deadliest weapon isn't the plane, it's the mind that processes the kill.